Imagine you're a 29-year-old woman. You've been working a full-time job for the past 5 years, and you still can't afford your own home. Now, this is the reality of many young Australians living in the country, a country where the cost of living keeps them trapped in a cycle of renting and financial insecurity. The dream of homeownership and financial security remains exactly that, a dream. Why is it so difficult for young people in Australia to envision a future in their own nation? Is the housing crisis to blame? Uncertainty at work? Or is there a more serious, structural reason for this generalized disillusionment? Let's find out. A growing number of young Australians are losing sight of their aspiration of buying a home. There are several reasons for that. However, the major one is evident. Housing prices in Australia have skyrocketed over the past decade. As you can see, with every generation that followed, the probability of buying a home when between the ages of 25 and 39 dropped. Compared to 62.1% of Generation X in 2006 and almost two-thirds of baby boomers in 1991, over half of millennials in 2021 were homeowners. The generation that was least likely to buy a house outright was millennials. Millennials were less likely than baby boomers to buy a property free and clear of a mortgage while they were between the ages of 25 and 39. Why has this been the case? Over the past 25 years, the housing market has undergone some remarkable changes, going through 5 different boom cycles that have increased the national median house value by 412%. Over the previous 25 years, property prices have increased annually in all the capital cities by 5.9% to 8.1%, although rural markets have often performed significantly worse. The national average property worth was just $111,500 25 years ago. Since then, prices have increased by 6.8% per year on average to reach their present level of $571,400. Now, over the course of the last 25 years, the ordinary Australian homeowner would have witnessed a rise in value of over $18,400 annually. Now, this is the house price to income ratio in Australia from the first quarter 2019 to the first quarter 2024. What do you see? The home price to income ratio began to linger around 99 to 100 in early 2019. Now, this suggests a balanced state where earnings and house prices were roughly in line with each other. But there's an apparent decrease in early 2020. By the second quarter, the ratio has dropped to its lowest point of 97. Now, this decline represents a brief interval during which incomes outpaced home prices. But this calm is short-lived. The ratio begins a sharp rise in the third quarter of 2020 and reaches an extraordinary peak of 120.9 by the middle of 2021. This sharp increase implies that home values were rising far more quickly than earnings, possibly as a result of the expanding real estate market and shifting economic conditions. There's a minor fall in the latter half of 2021 and the first quarter of 2022. By the fourth quarter of 2021, the ratio is 114.8. But this decline is just momentary. The ratio begins to rise again in the middle of 2022 and reaches its maximum point of 122.7 in the first quarter of 2024. As of 2023, the median house price in Sydney is $1.2 million. To put that into perspective, that's more than 10 times the median annual household income. Compare this to countries like Germany, where the median house price is only 6 times the median income, and you'll begin to see the scale of the problem. What does all of this mean for young people? There are 3 devastating implications for all of this. First, renting has become a lifelong reality for many young Australians. Millennials don't see an end to this trend in sight. The second implication of these harrowing statistics is that many young people are living with their parents well into their 30s. Nearly 40% of 18 to 24-year-olds still live in their family home. Lastly, a lot of millennials cannot achieve their life milestones as easily as their parents did. There's a delay or abandonment of plans to start a family, go back to school, or even take professional chances. Now, it should be mentioned that compared to boomers, millennials who do own a home have similar financial obligations. However, obtaining a deposit has grown considerably more challenging unless you have an offer from your parents' bank. This opens up an entirely new conversation about intergenerational inequality, which we'll get into in a while. The worst part about all of this is that housing affordability is not the only problem for the youth of Australia. Job insecurity is a whole other Pandora's box yet to be discussed. If you're enjoying the video thus far, don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more informative insights into the economies of the world. One thing is true. The day of stable, long-term, get-yourself-a-10-year employment are gone. Just look at what young people think. According to a survey done by NAB, 10% of respondents said that they thought their job security would deteriorate over the course of the next year, up from 7% who thought it would be in the next 3 months. The least optimistic about their job security were those with the lowest earnings. Because of social and economic situations, 74% of Australians reported experiencing significant distress during the December 2023 quarter, demonstrating the continued high impact financial concerns are having on mental health. In 2023, over 40% of Australians under 30 were employed in casual or part-time work. According to the most recent Scanlon report, which charts the evolution of social cohesion in Australia, nearly half of millennials and Generation Z, or those between the ages of 18 and 44, reported that they were just getting along financially. They thought their efforts were worthwhile only occasionally, or sometimes at all. Imagine your young graduate juggling 3 part-time jobs, commuting between them, and still barely making enough to cover rent and bills. This constant hustle leaves little room for personal growth or future planning. Then, the rise of the gig economy tells another devastating story. The Actuaries Institute said that between 2015 and 2019, Australia's gig economy expanded 9 times. It increased by 33% in 2019 alone, reaching a valuation of $6.3 billion. This may sound good, but here's the catch. This shift from the traditional employment model has led to higher financial instability. The lack of a steady income and the volatility of employment availability are 2 significant disadvantages of relying only on gig labor. Because project profits might fluctuate greatly, gig workers sometimes find it difficult to anticipate their monthly income. A worker may discover more gigs than they can manage in 1 month, and none in the next, due to the unpredictability of gig prospects. Such uncertainty makes it incredibly difficult to plan for the future. Now, one thing that millennials fare better off in than boomers is in education. When it comes to post-secondary education, millennials have much more education than baby boomers or Generation X. Men's tertiary qualification rate increased from less than 4% to 20% between 1975 and 2016, while women's tertiary qualification rate increased from less than 2% to 24%. But here's the catch: the crushing, skyrocketing student debt. Previously, boomers could have paid off their debts by working minimum wage, but for the new generation, the timeline looks doubly extended. Then there's a case of entire generational inequality, with older Australians living their best lives and exhausted younger generations cutting back even on necessities. A widening generational wealth divide threatens to take root. Experts worry that if significant change is not implemented, the economic crisis that young Australians are facing due to rising living expenses, low rental vacancy rates, and unaffordable housing prices will deepen generational inequality. Wealth inequality between generations is a hot topic in Australia, and it's often highlighted by phrases like "okay boomer" and stereotypes about younger generations enjoying luxuries like smash Davo. But these memes and phrases are more than just jokes and stereotypes. Combining measures of wealth and income reveals that older Australians are significantly better off than younger Australians, according to Productivity Commissioner Catherine de Fontenay. She noted that about half of the people in the top 10% of wealth-adjusted income are over the age of 55. Now, this highlights the substantial generational gap in economic well-being. Now, this debate has become more relevant with the recent spike in interest rates. You see, when interest rates rise, it makes borrowing money more expensive. In Australia, about 30% of households have a mortgage. Younger people, particularly millennials and Gen Z, have recently taken out large mortgages at previously low interest rates. Now, with rising interest rates, their monthly mortgage payments have increased, reducing the amount of money they have left over for other expenses. In contrast, older generations, like baby boomers, often have smaller mortgages or have already paid off their homes. They aren't as affected by rising interest rates because they don't owe as much money. Plus, they can use their savings for daily expenses rather than needing to put that money towards mortgage payments. This difference is making the wealth gap between generations even more noticeable. This division is illustrated in the graph below, which is based on the Commonwealth Bank's earnings results from early 2024. It examines the variations in spending and savings among the different household types. You can see that the savings has decreased among younger households as compared to a year earlier, while expenditure growth has also been modest. The opposite is true for older families, who've been increasing their savings and spending, which makes sense given the high savings rates made possible by interest rate rises. Now, this suggests that higher interest rates have no effect on such households. Because of rising interest rates, younger households' disposable income has decreased, which is reflected in the disparity between their spending and savings patterns across age groups. Jack Simmons, an atmospheric scientist who works part-time for the Tomorrow Movement, shared with the business what every young Australian is feeling. "I'm in my late 20s. This is the time where I should be saving up for a house deposit. To me, that feels impossible given the way things are at the moment," he said. "I think the concept of setting myself up, which maybe previous generations have been able to do in their late 20s and early 30s, feels unattainable for me right now. With all this in mind, how do we move forward? Addressing the housing crisis and creating a fairer property market for younger people, whether they want to rent or buy, will take a long time. Eliza Owen from CoreLogic says that there aren't any quick fixes because the problem has been building up for many years due to poor policies. One major area needing reform is the tax system, especially regarding investment properties. Currently, there's a significant tax discount on profits from selling investment properties after just 1 year. Now, this encourages short-term investments and quick sales, which can drive up property prices rapidly. Changing this tax rule to reduce the discount over time could discourage these quick sales. Ultimately, this will help to create more stable and affordable housing options. However, there's a long road to cover. Change is possible, but all of this requires bold policies and societal shifts. What will Australia choose? As we wrap up, consider this. Will the next generation of Australians find a home and a secure future in their own country, or will they be forced to seek it elsewhere? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to check out these recommended videos. We'll see you next time.